Welcome back to Field Security. In this session, we're going to be talking about med and hygiene. In particular, 5 areas. The first one about understanding the situation, then about preparation before you go. Then we're going to be looking at the third session, is going to be quite important, which is going to be recognizing the stresses your body's going to go under. We're then going to talk about preparation, about arriving, and then about making sure that you stay safe whilst you're there. Okay, as always, as you have any questions, just chuck them in the comments and I'll answer them as we go along. If you think about any questions in a few days, in a few months, a few years again, just chuck them in the comments and I'll get back straight to you. So before we go, the situation itself. So look at this map with all the different colours. So these colours must mean something, right? So before we drill down into that, have a little bit look at this. And I'll just pause here for a second for you just to familiarise yourself with the different keys here. The ones we're really sort of focusing on are the purples, the orange and the reds. Less concerned about the green and the amber ones, but clearly something to be recognising. But the ones we just need to be most conscious are the purples, the ambers and the reds. So look at this screen again, and if you need to go back to that, just chuck the video back again in slow time. So have a look at where you're going to and what colour that is. And then sort of cross-check that then with the definitions of what's happening there and the areas that you might want to be thinking about before we're going on. So that really is about just understanding the situation. Okay, enough on that. If you've got any sort of questions and queries and you want a bit more detail on that, just chuck in the questions and in the comments and I'll get straight to you. The next bit is about getting ready and the preparation before going on. There's an absolutely fantastic website called fitfortravel.nhs.uk. Please go on that. Effectively what that is the access to all the database that all the medical professionals have, so the doctors, the nurses, the travel advisors and all that sort of stuff have an access to a medical version of what to do to prepare to go in different locations. There is a easy to understand for non-medically trained individuals website which accesses exactly the same data, and that is it. It's fitfortravel.nhs.uk. Anybody can access it, you don't need to log on, and you can go straight into there. So for example, it will give you the latest information about what the malaria, for example, we got here, India, we've got malaria hotspots in these particular locations. It's kept up to date in terms of seasons, what's going on. You can just drill down to wherever country you're going to and boom, you can find out exactly what's going on. Really, really helpful. There's also another section within that we're called the advice bits, which gives you loads and loads and loads of information that you can just read in your own time and leisure as to what on earth to do in different countries, and gives loads and loads of advice about that. So that is a really helpful website. Before you go, the important thing to find out, and you can find this information on this website, is getting advice about vaccines. And finding out what vaccines you need before you go into that country, and make sure you get jabbed up accordingly. The best place to go obviously is to your doctor or to the nurse, and that is standard. But if you just want to understand and read around what you need to do in terms of your preparation, just so you can start planning how much time you need to do for that preparation, that is the best website to go to. The next one we're going to look at is about arriving and the stresses on your potential body. So I'll just give you a pause of a moment now, just jot them down in a little notebook, or just think in your own mind. When you get to a particular country and you know it's not a different climate, at a different location, different time zone to where you perhaps flying from or traveling from, the sort of stresses on your body as a result of that. Just have a little bit of a think of what that might be. Okay, so the sorts of things that it might be are these. So you may well be dehydrated, especially if you're coming in an aircraft. So you know it's dry air that's going around. You've been in there for several hours, so you're going to be drying. It's really important to just hydrate with water as much as you possibly can. Although other fluids are available on a flight, but they do dehydrate you. A little thing I think is 2 or 3 times as much alcohol affects your body when you're at cruising altitude as it does on the ground. So just make sure you do stay hydrated. You'll feel a self-induced pressure of wanting to do a good job on day one. So recognise that's a real thing, and just be honest about that. Equally with the fear of the unknown, if you've not done a huge amount of preparation, or even if you've done some preparation, you'll still have an element of doubt of kind of like, what is exactly going to be, and it's just being honest with yourself and recognizing that that's going to be a real thing. A change of routine. You're going out for a particular reason, and that's going to be different to what you're doing currently. So that's going to have a stressor on the body, because the body just gets into a natural cadence of what it's doing and a natural rhythm. That's going to change. That's going to introduce more stressors on you. Self-induced pressure. This is going to be a big one. This is linked to the kind of want to do a good job on day one. You'll feel that naturally. Just you want to perform. You'll want to be able to just do something. You just want to be helpful. You just want to be useful, and that'll be a self-induced pressure that you have there. I imagine that there'll also be an element of fear of being ill. So please do recognise that as a thing, and just take on the natural precautions, as taking the tips within this session, and other tips as well, to make sure that you stay away from being ill. You're also going to be tired and jet lagged. One way to help with that is rehydration and just sleeping. So just recognise that. And the final one, it's going to be a different climate. It's either going to be hotter, colder, wetter, warmer, whatever it's going to be. It's likely going to be a different climate to the one you're in at the moment. So just recognise that, and then just bring these whole things together. That, do you know what? It's the situation is going to be different, and that's normal, and that's okay. And it's going to take a little bit of time to go through. So an awful lot of people who deploy on a regular basis, they go through a climatization process, and the reason that thing exists and the reason why it happens is because that all these things are real things, and it just takes a little bit of time. So just be patient with your body, and just be honest with yourself, and don't put too much pressure on yourself to perform on day one and just get straight into it. Just ease into it gently, and that is the sensible thing to do. Those people already in country recognize that straight away, and you'll come across as a much more rounded and kind of like a credible individual, that you actually just need that little bit of pace. So don't feel that you need to that huge amount of pressure straight on. Okay, so yeah, the bottom line: expect stress, understand and be sensitive to your body. Moving on. Water, right. I'm going to talk quite a bit about water now, both coming in and coming out, right, because it's probably the most useful thing you can do to try and stay safe and healthy. It's all down to just simple as water. So water for drinking. A filtered water bottle is going to be a little bit of might not be too much of an exaggeration, a lifesaver. So you can control and you can trust the water. You need to be taking on a lot of fluids, and you're not entirely sure what potential the water sources are going to be. So get a filtered water bottle. This is the one I use. It is brilliant. I'll perhaps see if I can try and chuck in a link in the description so you can find it easier. This is really helpful. It's essentially got a filter on one end that then sticks inside the water bottle, and then using the power of your own lungs, you get the water out. No batteries, nothing complicated. And do you know what's good about this particular system is that once the filter gets full of rubbish and there's a chance of the dirty water coming in, it stops working. So if you can pull water out of it, then it's clean water. And replacing these filters, they're not hugely expensive either. So that's my number one top tip, is to get a decent water filter that you can get. Obviously, clearly there's loads available, but that's the one that I researched and found that was quite helpful. The next one is on water bottles. Abundance of these everywhere. Just make sure that you check the seals. There are some unscrupulous individuals who will potentially try and sell, especially to foreigners, a water bottle that has just effectively just been filled up at the local tap, and then they just stuck a cap on it because they just picked up all the discarded water bottles out of a rubbish can or a trash can. So be wary of that. One thing to do is just check the seals, because that's just a little bit more of a difficult thing for people to try and manufacture while they're trying to pull the wool. So just be aware of that. And also talking about cleaning teeth. If you're putting anything in your mouth, you just need to make sure that you're comfortable with it. You don't need a lot, just to moisten a little bit on your toothbrush and then start going away, and then just a rinse out. It won't take a huge amount of your water allowance, but just use bottled water or filtered water to do that, and then you can just make sure that you're staying safe. Next, we're going to talk about the water for drinking, and in particular the effect on you. So we've just talked about the water coming into your body. Now we're talking about actually, what affects people. So water is 75%, sorry, your body is made up of 75% of water, and dehydration is probably one of the biggest problems. And that's why I'm going to emphasize the importance of water so much through this med session. Now, this is a really, really helpful chart to try and understand how dehydrated you are. And you can use this in the next loo break or whatever you're going to understand what level dehydration you're in and how much water you need to be taking on. So if it's kind of straw, it's kind of okay, but as it's starting to work its way through all these other colours, all the way up to the orangey colour there, you really, really need to be going to get quite concerned about how much fluids you are. So there's advice there on the screen in terms of what you need to do as an immediate sort of corrective action. It's not complicated. It's just about taking on more water. When you're out and about and doing some actual work, it's worth thinking about, actually there's a heat stress indicator of what you can do. So if you're in these sort of temperatures here, in terms of what's going on, this is the sort of activity time and how much water intake you should be doing every hour to stay healthy. And as things are starting to get further, this is where you really need to be thinking, right, is this really sensible to be doing stuff? I know some of these figures might be low, especially for some of the countries that you're heading off to, but do factor in that it's actually going to have a significant knock-on effect to you. So you need to take advantage of the shade. You need to take advantage of making sure that you're taking on plenty of fluids. Try and work out what can you do this time when it's not the midday sun, or kind of like the few hours leading up to and afterwards. And just think these things through and just be sensitive to how your body works as well. As a random little bit of a trick, this is something that I came across. This is a genuine loo in Laos. That is a river just over here, and then just on the other side there's a place to eat, just a little cafe on the side of the road, which interestingly looks at the back of this wall here, and that was the boys' room, which I found quite amusing. But basically, the reason I'll flag that up and to bring in attention is literally, there's this chart here that you can look to try and work out as things are going along. But do try and make sure that you do the P test, and this is my top tip: clear once a day. So providing that your kidneys get a clear run through once a day and you hit clear, now that's great. Now if you can, that's a minimum. So if you can hit that 2 or 3 times a day, then absolutely brilliant. But please do make sure that you do clear at least once a day, just to make sure your kidney function stays healthy. Okay, so now we're going to be talking about while you're there and water for eating. So if you're eating out, do you know what? If you're eating in a good place, it's not going to be an insult to go into the kitchen and kind of go just check, see what's going on, and see if what water filter they're using to prepare your food. That is not an insult. That if they've got a good kitchen, they'll be proud to show off. In terms of trying to work out whether it's a good water filter or not, then the thumb rule I use is, if it sounds a bit German, it's probably quite good. Other manufacturers are available and probably just as good, but that's the thumb rule I personally use. The other bit of tips I'd give you is about cutlery. If you can, I know this is a bit wasting on the plastic, so there are other ways of doing this as well. But if you've got a way to have your own cutlery or a disposable cutlery or whatever it is, then that is safe, and that's something you're putting in your mouth with your food. So it's something to think through. A lot of nations have a lot of troubles with power cuts, refrigeration issues, so that can turn meat off. It can increase the amount of bacteria within food. Places, eating ice cream, meat, and all that sort of stuff is not hugely recommended if you're in a nation that's frequently getting power cuts, or alternatively you're going somewhere and you're not entirely sure whether they've got generator backups. Salads, really good, but are normally washed in lots of water, so not particularly hugely recommended. And also, you're in a nation, especially if you've not been there for a huge amount of time, you might not necessarily speak the language fluently, or alternatively, you're going somewhere and you don't have a native speaker with you. One top tip I have is asking a native friend just to say, can you write down on a piece of paper, can I see your water filter, or can I have no salad and no garnish on my meal, please, or I don't want I only want vegetables that have been boiled, all that sort of stuff. You can write a little note and you can literally just hand that to the person you're chatting to and say, when I order my food, and you point that out, they kind of go, oh, okay, I understand what you mean. Because just trying to do some form of translating or using Google Translate or whatever, it just causes so much confusion, and nothing speaks louder than actual language people understand. I've mentioned this in the basic security video earlier, but one thing that is worth mentioning is, if just take photographs of essentials. So like a toilet, a police station, food, bottled water, just take a photo, have it on your phone, and then when you need it, you can just bring it up and picture paints 1,000 words. And another one is a top tip is Coke, or other brands are available. I'm not pushing one particular thing, but basically the way Coke is made, you perhaps remember at school when you put the penny in Coke and it kind of like it shined up, or you put a bit of meat in Coke and it just dissolved. Yeah, it's potent stuff, but it's also really good at killing bugs. So if you have a Coke after you've perhaps taken something a bit dodgy, or you're not entirely sure about the meal, or you've drank something a bit weird, or you're doing some form of outdoor activity and you've perhaps fallen into a river or a lake, neck a Coke, and it'll just kill what's in the stomach on top of what's already there. Cool. So the next bit I'm going to look about is, and that's kind of like water coming in and water coming out, and water that you're using for cooking. So really big focus on water there. The next bit is about hands and feet. So hands is a fabulous way of collecting germs. Just make sure that you are conscious what you're doing with them, because it's really easy to touch all sorts of stuff and they come into your mouth. Soap is just kills bugs, and it doesn't matter if someone might be saying, do you know what, that soap looks a bit dirty. Soap kills dirt, right, and is safe. So just use the soap. If you don't have soap, use hand sanitizer. Some people think that it's just the same as soap. It's not. Soap is much better than hand sanitizer, but hand sanitizer is better than nothing. And it's just so important just to keep on using that. Just be conscious as to what's going into your mouth or any sort of orifices where bugs might transmit. And likewise with handshakes, naturally that's going to happen quite a lot, but just be really conscious as to you don't know what's on your hand, and then that might go somewhere else. Clearly, don't be rude. After you've finished having that conversation and that chat, you just use that hand sanitizer. Just keep your hands clean, and then you might not accidentally, inadvertently touch your mouth or nose or whatever else, and the bugs might come in. The next bit is about feet. So keeping your feet dry is really important. So if your feet start sweating, then you're just going to start having all sorts of problems. So just keep them dry and just keep them cleaning them regularly. Equally, have a sensible pair of shoes on. Flip-flops are really comfy, but if you're walking around, it's really easy to catch your toe, and then all of a sudden you've got a cut. Bugs can get in through a cut, and all of a sudden that makes life a lot more difficult, and that can turn into an infection. So have some form of covering, approach shoes or walking boots or trainers, whatever it is. It just protects you better. If you are wearing boots and stuff that you don't ordinarily wear, then just make sure you break them in before going, so that you've got the blisters. Top tip on breaking in a pair of shoes: if you can get the zinc oxide tape onto wherever your hot spots are, wherever you get onto your blisters, put that on. Then a thin pair of socks, then a thick pair of socks, then your boots. And you know what happens then is the boot hits the thick sock, then the thin sock, and then the zinc oxide tape. And you know what? I have ever since using that tip, I have never had a blister. So top tip on breaking in boots. Next one, little nasties, bugs like scorpions or spiders or just random stuff. Do you know what? Your shoes are like really comfy and really cozy to live in. So if you just before you put them on, just turn the boot upside down, give it a little tap. Something might fall out. Try not to freak out too much, because you're more scary than that is. So you're going to freak it out as much as it's going to freak you out. And then just make sure that your boot's empty, and then you know that when you put your foot in, you're not going to get a little nasty surprise. The next bit is about protecting you and your team. So a lot of people will feel that they want to adopt a pet because they're cute and all lovely, but do you know what? They just carry so many diseases, and some dogs and pets and cats and stuff like that are psychologically unstable because of how they've been treated in the past, and might just have some form of unprovoked aggression. So the best thing to do is just to not adopt a pet. Insects, not to be overly scared about them, but the best way to understand, ones to avoid and ones that are okay, regardless of how they look, is just to ask locals and to what's going on. And the important thing to do is, if there are some ones that are a bit more dangerous, is to understand what you need to do to try and get yourself safe again. So that might be something you can do immediately before getting medical care, but that's something to just chat with in the local area. The next bit is about, right, okay, how do you get some decent care? It's important to know this before you need it. So find out where all the hospitals are in the local area. Go and then visit them, because the hospitals will be of different standards depending on what they are. They might be more specialist in particular areas, or alternatively, might have no specialism whatsoever. And you know what? There might be long queues in some. Try and work out which ones are the most appropriate ones, and just become familiar with them and how long it takes to get there. You know, with roads at different times of the day and that sort of stuff. Then try and work out where, if there's something significant like a road accident or something like that, where you can actually go for a significant sort of trauma. You know, because smaller surgeries, smaller hospitals might not be able to cope with a big one, a big issue. So you're better off going to the big place in the first place. Also, try and, as part of that recce into that hospital, try and understand how it's going to get paid for. So will they take cards? They need cash. You know, and if that's the case, and perhaps they only take cash, you need to make sure that you actually have enough to be able to pay the bill, because quite often you have to pay the fee for the medical treatment before you get the treatment, and you don't want to hold up because of that. The next bit is about getting the basics right. So cuts is a really good way of getting infections. I mentioned about stubbing your toe and that sort of stuff. Just be conscious that if you do get a cut, you just need to treat it properly. You know, a bit of Savlon, bit of protection, whatever it is. If it's minor, if it's obviously major, you obviously need a bit more support. At some point, you're more likely to get D&V. Be a team player. Tell everybody else that you've got it, and then just try and isolate yourself into, you know, one particular type of things where you're eating, sleeping, and also where you're going to the loo, because that way it minimises the transmission to everybody else in the team. HRABC, so hazard response, airway, breathing, circulation. It's a basic first aid, what to do if someone collapses and they're not breathing, or they perhaps got a heart attack, all that sort of stuff. Just so that you know what to do in that situation. If that's a term that you've never come across, just get yourself on a first aid course before going on. And on that, if you don't know who the medic is in your team, you know what? It might be you, or alternatively, you might be the person that people are relying on to do medical stuff. So back to my last point, just do a med course before going, a proper full-on course. About knowing yourself now. Do you know your blood group? Because if you need a blood transfusion or a top-up or anything like that, they'll need this sort of information. So know that before going, and have that on a useful document, something that sits in your pocket, or on your wallet or your purse, or whatever it is. Recognise that some people are more susceptible to heat or cold, and feel the cold or the heat more than other people. That's just normal, right? Okay, we're just such a diverse people. Just recognise that and just take precautions accordingly. Equally, you know, certain times of the day you might have ebbs and flows in terms of kind of like your how much sugars are in your bodies and that sort of stuff. So please just make sure that you eat at the right time when you need to eat, because everybody knows that you and your friends and your colleagues and the whole team get hangry at various stages. So just be sensitive to that. Likewise with sleep, it's a really good way of snapping at other people and just not being as focused. So just be honest with yourself with when you get sleep deprivation, and also, you know, how do you get distracted? You know, and just be honest. You know, none of this is a test. This is real life. This is just being honest with other people and honest with yourself. And we've talked earlier about the increase in physical stress is going to make your experience worse. Just recognize that, and how you can de-stress those, so you can actually have as much of an enjoyable time as you can be, and more importantly, you can be as helpful as you possibly can. So the next bit I'm going to focus on is on just a little bit of a summary, and the big one on this is about planning and preparation. Just making sure that you're suspicious of water. Make sure that you know that the source of water is clean, that you're going to use good water, that you're going to cook or you're eating with stuff that's not going to make you ill. You're going to keep an eye out on where your hands are going and how they are, because the hands are the easiest things to bring bugs into our bodies. How to look after your feet. What causes physical stress. If you remember that sort of clamping thing, just go back in there and just be honest with yourself as to what's actually causing the stress on that particular day. And then also what to do in the event you've either small injuries or major injuries, in terms of what medical care is available. Again, this all boils down to just good planning and preparation. None of this is rocket science. It's just a case about sitting down, thinking about the situation, and then just talking it through as a team, or just whiteboarding it with yourself, or brainstorming, or wherever it is, and just having a good amount of planning and preparation. And generally that removes so many of the problems that so many teams suffer. Cool. Again, if you can't be bothered to do any notes, or you've forgotten a part of stuff, or I'm really boring and you switched off halfway through and you just look at this a little bit later, just come back at another point. And the easiest way to do that is just to click on subscribe. Right, and that was it. So that was Med and Hygiene. The next one we're going to look at is natural disasters, and I will see you then.